guys, thank you for stopping by. Don't forget to subscribe, like, and share. And I hope you enjoyed this interview. And she was charged 25,000 naira without any explanation. So I was really trying to find out, has the cybersecurity levy started? Of course, it hasn't started. According to what we've been told, that it will be implemented in the next 2 weeks. What exactly was she charged 25,000 naira for a transaction of 2.5 million naira? And nothing was just written, charges by one of the banks. So actually, that's actually part of what we'll be discussing. My guest is joining me right now. Kelvin Emmanuel, welcome again.
Good morning.
Good morning. Where do we start from? You know, it's like one day, one trouble in this country, one day, one trouble. One day, you know, one day something will just happen. Now, let's get started. I want you to really explain to me what's your understanding of the cybersecurity levy? Because even in discussions that we've had since a few days now, since Monday that circular came out, there seems to be confusion. Also confusion about the rates, you know, some are exempt and all of that. So what's your own understanding of it?
Well, you know, this act was passed in 2015, 2 weeks before President Goodluck Jonathan handed over to former President Buhari. So it's not new. However, Sections 24 was amended and repealed in February of 2024. And the amendment was signed by the President in February of 2024. So the Cybersecurity Act is 2024, of 2024 as amended. It was first passed in 2015. But successive previous presidents have not implemented it. You know, because number one, 0.5% of transactions that excludes certain categories of entities is ridiculous, especially coming at a period where inflation is over 40%, right? And there's demand destruction. Nigerians, the share of what Nigerians use to buy food to the ratio of their income is nearly 90%. So the amount of money they take from their income to buy food is nearly 90%. Lagos has the highest food inflation in Nigeria. Food inflation in Lagos is like 45%, if not more. It's so bad, you know. Food inflation is lowest in Bauchi. And
Lagos is a state, according to the Living Standard Survey of the NBS at the time. I don't know if you recall that report. I think in 2018 or 2019, that said Lagos State is the only state that spends more on non-food items. Can you recall that in terms of when we were told by the MBS that Nigerians spend 3/4 of their income on food? So it buttresses your point now that Nigerians even spend close to 90% on food, including the Lagos that used to spend more on non-food items.
Exactly.
I hope you understand it.
Exactly. Yeah. To be honest with you, I don't think this is provided for in Nigeria's tax code. And this is especially because when these monies are deducted and is credited to the CBN, it's remitted to the Office of National Security Advisor, Sections 44.
To be administered.
To be administered, right? They are beneficial administrators and owners, yeah? Sections 44, 5, and 6 of the Cybersecurity Act says that the Office of the ONSA will keep records of their expenditure. And then they'll be audited by the Auditor General of the Federation. It means that these monies are not appropriated by the National Assembly. Now, I understand the whole argument for security agencies, ONSA, the DMI, the DIA, the DSS, the NIA. You can't call them to the National Assembly and begin to ask them for line items on expenditure. Oh, what was this for? How did you spend this? Because most of the activities are clandestine. I understand that, okay? But considering how much is going to be remitted, and considering that the Act says that these monies are not going to be appropriated by the National Assembly, and it's coming at a time when Nigerians are saying, we don't have money to buy food. There is fuel scarcity. If you look at the Consumer Credit Survey of Credit Corporation, you see that most of the survey on about 1.2 trillion naira requests that has been made so far to the credit corporation is mostly to pay school fees, to pay house rents. That's why Nigerians want loan from their government. Average request of ₦1 million. That's why Nigerians want loan. And the demography that has the most requests is from 26 to 40, asking for house rents and school fees. So considering the realities, does it make sense that if I transfer 10 million naira, I'm to pay 50,000 naira as charges? Is the government being emotionally intelligent? Are they reading the room? Are they living in a bubble? Are they realizing that Nigerians are finding it difficult to eat food?
Now, the question is, I understand where you're coming from. The question is, if we take a look at it now, where the central bank said some financial transactions are exempt, how do you now balance it in terms of how will the banks know the originator of the transaction, which exempt transaction it is? I could be transferring from my salary account. I hope you understand where I'm coming
Yes.
to. In terms of the 16 financial transactions exempt that includes, perhaps you can put that slide on the screen, the salary, loan, disbursement and repayment.
Suspense accounts.
Yeah, suspense accounts, letter of credit, and all of that intrabank. That's it on the screen there. So these categories of financial transactions, how do you now balance it out, really? Because if we are crying as Nigerians too, how do the banks know that, okay, they would definitely have an idea of it, but where does it put me as a bank customer? So is it that when I'm doing that, I will have to put in bracket or differentiate?
No, the Nigerian Interbank Payment and Settling System,
NIBS,
they have a protocol and they have configuration for this. So this is not an issue at all, right? The circular has been given by the central bank. The banks will adjust. They'll work with NIBPPS to implement it. This is not going to be an issue.
How will the customer adjust? That's what I'm saying now.
No, are you talking about adjustment in terms of the inconvenience of paying 0.5%?
Yes. And the adjustment of, for example, they say salary payments there, isn't it?
Yes.
So does that mean, for example, okay, all the banks would, if you want to, like, this is a salary account.
Nancy,
I hope you understand what I'm saying.
By the way, I think a federal high court just passed a judgment that invalidated the police levy. Yeah,
police trust fund.
Police trust fund
of 0.005% that companies are supposed to pay.
The Nigerian police force has no right to ask for a special levy from Nigerians. Nigerians pay their taxes. If you want to pay a levy, raise the taxes. I'm not in support of raising the taxes because Nigerians are going through hellfire right now. Raise the taxes and deduct and increase the allocation to the Nigerian police force. Instead
of you having sector-specific levies and funds. There's also the NASENI one, by the way. NASENI, the Engineering, Science and Engineering Infrastructure Fund. I think that's 0.25%.
And this is the reason why I feel like class action suits are not a thing in Nigeria. Because obviously the National Assembly has failed Nigerians. They failed Nigerians. The National Assembly is the town hall of the people. You're supposed to represent the people. The people should be able to send their letters, make their phone calls, send their messages to their representatives. And the Speaker of the House of Rep waved it off. He waved it off. Is it not from a constituency in Kaduna? Are his people not complaining? He waved it off. Without even as much as a debate.
Now, there are a lot of critics that have also said, if you take a look at NLC, TUC, LCCI, NASIMA, other stakeholders have come out to speak against this levy at this time that is ill-timed. Nigerians are suffering at this time, more taxes everywhere. Whether it's direct or even indirect taxes, if the government does not even raise taxes, one way or the other, you are paying for your livelihood, one way or the other, whether you are paying for water, or you are doing the roads in your house, or you are buying meters, or you are buying transformer. They are all forms of taxes one way or the other. How would you now, what would you say to government, especially now criticisms around it, from these bodies. That's one. Then number two, these bodies that are also criticizing, one would also ask, where were these bodies when this law
Because at second reading, it's
was
supposed to
being
go into
deliberated
public
on?
hearing before it goes into third and final reading, and then it's passed with a vote, right? And then the bill that is passed is sent to the president for assent. Okay? To be honest with you, I don't know how this
It was
skipped
so fast,
everyone.
it escaped everyone. And the president signed it so fast.
The president signed an amendment because this bill was actually passed
yes.
under Goodluck Jonathan in 2015. I join my voices with all the bodies that have criticized this, that is ill-timed, is insensitive. Yeah, it shows that the presidency, they don't have their eyes and ears on the ground. They don't feel the pulse of the people. You cannot bring a 0.5% charge on transactions without listening to the people's representatives. The people are suffering, Nancy.
Okay, let's take the card on, there was a very beautiful graphics that was done by Analyst Data Services. Of course, Dr. Lowokeri's company, he did that and he sent to me. Let's quickly take that if we can, guys. And he tried to break down, for example, if you're doing a transaction of 10,000 naira, at the end of the day, what you expected to pay. Of course, we know that even currently, we have the transfer fee, you have the SMS notification. What else again do you have? You have the stamp duty that will be paid by the receiver? The receiver now, the sender, transfer fee. What again am I missing? SMS,
Stamp
maintenance.
duty.
Yes, I mentioned stamp duty, maintenance fee, and all of that. Even at the end of the month, you see charges on your account.
The problem is that, like I said, in other countries, when unpopular laws come like this, the people come together and they sue the government. And they allow the courts to decide. Class action suits are not a thing in Nigeria, and I don't understand it. Because we keep doing this politics of tribe and religion. And we don't realize that we have commonalities. We have common interests as Nigerians. Whether you're Nupe or you're Fulani or you're Niger Delta or you're Ibibio or you're Igbo or you're Yoruba, everybody is going to pay this levy. This levy is not sector specific to, oh, if you're from Borno, if you're Kanuri, you're exempt. No.
So if I'm doing a transaction of 10,000, I'll pay.
If the National Assembly has failed to speak up for Nigerians and challenge the presidency, it's time for Nigerians to come together and file a class action suit against the government.
Do you think that the presidency will yield to this? Do you think that the federal government would, be sensitive enough to withdraw this?
I think every body association should continue to pile pressure on the government, pile pressure on the Senate President, on the Speaker of the House of Rep, on the ranking members, pile pressure on their governors to speak up. It's the height of insensitivity.
How about the other side of it, which is that we suffer cybercrime in this country a lot. Companies lose money. Even these banks lose so much money in terms of, cybercrime. Of course, we know Yahoo here and all of that. If you take a look at, I think, Alliance, I've interviewed a couple of them a few times, and they tell me, even from the reports they release, I see huge sums of money that corporations lose due to cybercrime. How would you now juxtapose this argument around? We need this thing, Nancy, to be able to fight cybercrime. That's one. Then number two, is the NSA, Office of the NSA also, is it supposed to be collecting that money? Nancy, do you understand what I'm saying? Perhaps as a revenue generating, they are now giving you the money. Where does it leave perhaps states? Or do you understand what I'm trying to say?
I am a supporter of Nuhu Ribadu.
Are you a supporter of the Nuhu Ribadu as NSA or support for the office? Okay.
I'm both a supporter of Nuhu Ribadu. I've been a long-time supporter of Nuhu Ribadu. His work then as chairman of EFCC, and his office as the Office of National Security Advisor. As a matter of fact, I'll tell you that security has improved under his stewardship.
Oh.
Talking about the fight, crude oil thefts in the Niger Delta, the fight. Talking about the coordination of all the security agencies in the northeast, in the northwest. Banditry has reduced.
Are you saying banditry has reduced?
It has
reduced.
reduced.
Or is underreported? People are being kidnapped, but people don't come out anymore to speak.
People are being kidnapped.
Or whether we are not
reporting
it any longer.
Not as much as we had it at a point when there was an attack on the capital, on FCT, and the presidential brigade guards had to intervene to repel that attack. Not as much as we had it. So there's been an improvement, okay? But let's keep the facts straight. The question we should ask is, does the office of the NSA have the authority, like the Federal Inland Revenue Service, to ask for a levy from Nigerians? The answer is no. They don't.
What will be the impact on financial inclusion? Because many Nigerians that have bank accounts do not have up to $500,000. Or let's say the band is $500,000 naira in bank accounts across the country, perhaps over 60 million, about 61 million bank accounts across the country. That's one. From NIBS last year, electronic payment transactions, we recorded 611 trillion naira, I guess, or 600 trillion naira. NIBS actually said that the amount we've done through e-transactions, cashless transactions, are 600 trillion naira. For me, I tried to do the maths yesterday. 0.5% of that 600 trillion. That's a lot of money. So does this move also jeopardize the financial inclusion strategy of the Central Bank of Nigeria too?
I wouldn't jeopardize is a strong word, but it will affect financial inclusion. Because we've come to a point where people now use USSD. They're comfortable using USSD. 10 years ago,
yeah, it wasn't like that.
It wasn't like that. There was, the amount of internet banking is not as much as we have today. USSD was not a thing. Agency banking was not a thing. But we're here where we are today. In fact, the Central Bank of Nigeria has given a deadline to POS operators to register with CSC because a lot of fraud is being propagated through POS terminals, vendors that are not registered with the government. So I support financial inclusion, and I think that it's important to continue to drive it. But like all the stakeholders have said, the same thing, this decision is going to affect the drive of the government to increase the number of BVN holders, to increase the number of bringing people who are not in the banking system into the banking system so that you can create services for them, loan, insurance. Because the more you have unbanked come into the banking system, the more you're able to create services for them that will improve their well-being and raise their human development index.
Do you think that this is strong enough to dissuade people from having bank accounts?
It's not strong enough, but you're going to have people do a lot of cash transactions, more cash transactions.
But there will be a limit. There will be a limit. And now, I don't know if you've also noticed, ATMs, terminals across the country do not dispense as much cash as they used to do.
They don't dispense as much cash, but there is P2P.
Yes, it's true. And we also have even POS operators in the marketplaces and all of that. So if you want the cash, they will give it to you.
Exactly. Now, you know, I'm going to say this again. Look, like I was saying about the Office of the NSA, they've done a good work with fighting manipulation of the exchange rates, which is very good. You know, the recent decision was to delete P2P entirely, which I believe, in my opinion, is a step in the right direction. Because whether we like it or not, there is, you know, a lot of movement of money and manipulation of the exchange rates from the P2P market. It's important that the government has a handle of who the actors are for P2P and for crypto in order to bring them and create a regulatory sandbox for them, okay? But let us keep things in perspective. The Office of the NSA as a beneficial owner and administrator does not have a right to request for a levy from Nigerians without this issue going to the National Assembly and without it being written into the tax code of Nigeria. It's not in the tax code. So
the Security Advisor Office will have close to 3 trillion naira as a result of this.
This is the reason why I honestly believe that in the circumstance where, obviously, the Senate President has failed, the Speaker has failed, his ranking members have failed to uphold the interests of Nigerians, who they represent at the National Assembly, the Third Zone, Nigerians should file a class action suit against the government. Let the courts decide.
What does this actually also do to the purchasing power of Nigerians, which has been eroded? You know, this country, I've said it times without number, even many years ago, that Nigeria has been turned to a sachet economy, as it were. You see that companies are even leaving. Yesterday, I was just thinking, and I put it out on social media, that can you tax your economy into prosperity? Can you tax a distressed economy of struggling population and businesses? We've seen Sanofi, we've seen a couple of big businesses saying that the ease of doing business in this country, you know, is so difficult. Companies are struggling, yet putting money even in the hands of the people, you're taking that away. Where you have an inflation rate of 33%, mixed reindex is high, unemployment rate is high, despite the MBS telling us it's 5%. You know, economy is not growing as much as it should grow. So where does it leave Nigerians, even as we close this segment?
You know, shrinkflation, it's very unfortunate.
Yeah.
The per capita income of Nigerians dropped by about 45% under the immediate past president. Population growth is higher than GDP growth, which is not good. And as we speak, we're technically in a recession, even if the government does not acknowledge it.
Why would you say we're technically?
Because
you know, technical recession has a definition.
It has a definition.
And it has characters.
And it says that
it has characters, Kelvin.
If population growth exceeds GDP growth rate consecutively for 3 quarters, you're in a technical recession.
How much are we growing there? Our last growth was about 3.4%. If you look at it averagely for 2023, about 3.1% Nigeria's economy grew. Our population growth is about 2.6, 2.7%. So
our population growth is actually 30%.
When did that happen, Kelvin?
Our population growth, Nigeria is growing at 30% year on year.
Okay, let me just take it with a pinch of salt, perhaps, because we've not even seen the data from the NBS for the first quarter of this year, isn't it? So, but I understand what you're trying to say in terms of Nigeria's population our population growth rate is higher than the economy, because as an economy, we're supposed to be expanding more than 3%. 3% is not what we should jubilate over.
I will always tell you. I will always tell you. At the risk of sounding like a broken record, Saudi Aramco is paying the Saudi government $31 billion. Public Investment Fund is getting $16.7 billion for owning 16% of Saudi Aramco, Nancy. They did over $140 billion in one financial year. Nancy, the solution is not to bring in more levies and bring more taxes. The solution is to go to your government-owned enterprise in the midst of high energy costs. The solution is to reduce your unit production cost per barrel. The solution is to turn NNPC around. NNPC is the key to raising the revenue the government needs to invest in public infrastructure, to invest in social services of the people.
How about the revenues that we're making already? Because many Nigerians are actually saying the little revenue we'll make, how do we actually even spend it?
That's a recurrent expenditure.
That's actually one of the issues here, that even if you take this 3 trillion in terms of cybersecurity levy, how are we sure that it's going to be used for what is
9.9 trillion?
Yes.
Yes, 68% of that 9.9 trillion goes into recurrent. 7.1 trillion goes into servicing debt. Okay? Your revenue is not more than 50% of your budget. Okay? So you have a situation where you're not making enough revenue to fund your budget. And because you're not making enough revenue to fund your budget, you don't have money to allocate to critical areas like defense, education, agriculture. These are critical areas. So in order for you to, augment the deficit, you go for bringing cybersecurity fund from 2015. You dust all your documents and you see that, oh, there is a loophole for us to generate revenue from Nigerians. If they were bringing enough revenue and the revenue to debt ratio in the budget, in the medium-term expenditure framework, yeah, was more in favor of revenue, and we didn't have a 10.8% revenue to GDP ratio, the presidency will not consider raising levy for the Office of National Security Advisor, which obviously mostly is going to be used to fund defense.
And our defense architecture has taken majority of our budget since the last over 10 years, at least since President Jonathan.
Exactly.
Trillions of naira.
Which is the reason I said, and even at the trillions of naira, you still don't have enough money to fund defense operations in Nigeria. Because as we speak, right, the Nigerian Army, the Nigerian Navy, the Nigerian Air Force, especially the Nigerian Army, they're stretched. Presidency is practically having to call the army to go to several parts of Nigeria to settle issues in peacetime when you're not fighting a civil war.
The responsibility for
the Nigerian police force.
Okay. I think Kelvin, let's leave it at that because I have another segment. We'll be discussing productivity issues in Nigeria's workforce. You're an employer of labor, isn't it? So I guess you would have also seen what the issues are around productivity. That's what we'll be discussing next segment. So, but many thanks for joining me on today's edition of the program. Thank you for watching. In case this is your first time watching us, thank you. Don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel, drop your comments as well as like, and most of all, share our content.